Perfect. So now we are live, we could say that. Welcome everybody. I hope that you're excited about this activity. From my end and representing IPB office here in Berlin, we were very excited with the idea of the Hidden Conflict series. We contacted HIIK, and I'm going to give the floor to them to explain a little bit more from their end. Our objective was to address a little bit of some conflicts around the world, because we do have this enormous conflict happening in Ukraine and Russia, and this is being addressed everywhere. And this is a matter that deserves our attention. We as IPB, representing an organization that works towards peace, is obviously on our side. So we are working towards this. But something we saw is the negligence towards other conflicts around the world. So not to take our attention from Ukraine, but literally to raise our attention, our awareness about other conflicts in the world, we started this series, this idea. So this compiles as 12 weeks of activities that we'll be doing. We are present mainly in social media, so we'll have a lot of posts and materials being provided in social media. So please interact with us via Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can do it with us, IPB, and with HIIK as well. And we are going to have 3 seminars, and this is the first one. This is the first conflict to address the situation. So welcome, thank you for everything. And I'm going to pass the word to Ilse, who was my main contact first in HIIK, to explain a little bit of their end and how they are contributing to this project. Thank you, Ilse, for coming.
Thank you so much. And also welcome to everyone. And thank you for joining us. And we are really, really excited to kick off this event or this series. As I can see, most of the people are HIIK members. I will keep the description of the HIIK a bit short. We're an independent, interdisciplinary and non-profit organization, which was founded in 1990 when it emerged from a research project of Professor Dr. Pfetsch. And basically, we are a non-profit organization which mainly consists of volunteers. So we have students, PhD candidates who basically observe the emergence and the course, as well as the settlement of political conflicts. And based on these observations, and also according to our methodology, we annually publish the conflict barometer, which includes basically the observation of over or almost close to, I think, 500 conflicts. Yeah, and we look at not only violent conflict, but also non-violent conflicts, which sort of sets us apart from many institutions, because they do tend to only look at highly violent conflicts, but we also look at smaller disputes that have the potential to become violent, but don't necessarily have to. And also this was sort of the idea behind the hidden conflict series as well. So not only to look at wars or conflicts that according to our methodology are wars, because they do end up getting a bit more attention, but also to generally look at violent conflicts that have an importance for their region, but just don't really get a lot of attention. Yeah, and yeah, one of the conflicts was basically Mozambique, which Enrico kindly, he prepared a small presentation for us to sort of give us a background and the major developments over the past few years. So I guess I'll hand it over to Enrico.
Okay, I try to share my presentation. Can you see something?
Yeah, it's loading. Now, yes, now I can see it.
All right. Okay. Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Enrico. I joined the HIIK in 2018, and since 2019, I'm monitoring the conflict that we are talking about today. And since 2019, I'm also a regional head of the working group on Sub-Saharan Africa. In the next 10 to 5 minutes, I want to give you a brief overview on some basic background information of the conflict, as well as an overview of its development. To that end, I will briefly give you an overview of the basic traits of the conflict according to our methodology, as well as some information about the presumed background to the conflict. And lastly, I will summarize the conflict dynamics since 2017. Due to time constraints, and since I'm not an expert on Mozambique, this can only be very superficial, and I'm already excusing myself if there are any mistakes. But I'm looking forward for a deeper discussion at the end of the presentation. Here's a short overview of the geography of Cabo Delgado, the area that we are talking about in Mozambique. It's a province, one of the 11 provinces of Mozambique, and is located
Enrico, I'm sorry to cut you, but I think we lost your voice. Can you try to close your microphone and open it again to see if we can hear you? No, not working still. Now it seems I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes.
Where did you lose me?
I would say that you would have to come back to the maps, to the map slide.
Okay, 1 second.
Yes, you were around there. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, some basic information on the geography of Cabo Delgado. It's one of the 11 provinces of Mozambique and is located in the extreme northeast of the country. You can see it here on the left, and how it is situated in Mozambique, and on the right side you have the larger image of the province. It borders Tanzania to the north, like it is bordered by Tanzania to the north, Nyasa province to the west, Nampula province to the south, and the Indian Ocean to the east. And it covers an area of about 83,000 square meters, which is roughly the size of Austria or a quarter of Germany. So it's pretty big. And it's inhabited by 2.3 million people. On this slide here, you can see the basic conflict frame, as we call it within our HIIK methodology. The main actors are on the one hand, the government of Mozambique, which is basically represented through its military and police forces. And on the other hand, you can see the violent extremist group called Al-Sunna wal Jama, or Ansar al-Sunna, or also locally referred to as Al-Shabaab, or as the abbreviation we are using is AWSJ. This violent extremist group is mainly consistent of young men who are deeply affected by the political and socio-economic inequalities in Cabo Delgado, which I will come to in a minute. And they are informed by extremist Islamist ideologies associated with radical Kenyan and Tanzanian preachers, most prominently Abu Rogo, a Kenyan cleric who was assassinated in 2012. And parts of the group are already active since the early 2007, as parts of the group already increasingly and radically challenged the predominant Sufi religious orders in Cabo Delgado. However, this group is composite in nature. There are different subgroups and with different backgrounds. There are a lot of Mozambicans within these groups, but also Kenyans, Tanzanians, and from the Eastern African coast. The conflict item, as we call it, is system ideology, because the ASWJ group seeks to overthrow and change the political system in Cabo Delgado and Mozambique. And since it is restricted and limited to Cabo Delgado, only there are some incursions into Tanzania and other provinces, but it's still considered as a subnational conflict. And currently, as of 2021, we are ranking it as the highest intensity in the conflict barometer as intensity 5, which means that we are considering it as a full-scale war. Okay. Some background information. The background to the conflict is, as it is often the case, extremely complex and multi-layered, and it is one of the least understood conflicts currently taking place on the African continent. Most of the research on this conflict to date, most of which is policy-oriented in one way or the other, explains the conflict in terms of a mix of historical, political, socioeconomic, religious, and ethnic components. However, new research is being published regularly, and the Institute for Security Studies in South Africa only this week published an extensive report on the conflict. If you're interested, you can download it and read it. And in this report, they conducted, I think, interviews over the last 4 years, and it's one of the first really in-depth reports on the conflict. So the conflict, its outbreak, and its development today cannot be properly understood without taking these dimensions into account, since it had been brewing for some time, or as I put it here in the slides, it has been in the making for some time. Historically, there has been a north-south divide in in Mozambique, at least since the late Portuguese colonialism. This is not only exemplified by the distance between the capital of Mozambique, Maputo, which is in the far south, and almost 2,000 kilometers away from Cabo Delgado and the local provincial capital, Pemba. In general, the political economy of Cabo Delgado is shaped by the experiences of the struggle for independence since 1964 and the subsequent civil war, which started in the 1990s, which came to an end in the 1990s. For example, after the independence struggle, members of the governing party Frelimo, which is mainly drawn from Makonde communities, one of the communities living in Cabo Delgado, claimed leading political, administrative, and economic positions, and at the same time, an elaborate illegal economy developed from which these elites in particular profited. Thus, the benefits of the state and the economy were characterized by exclusion, marginalization, and corruption. These historical divisions certainly had an impact on the socioeconomic structure in Cabo Delgado. The province is extremely rich in natural resources, with large natural gas reserves and ruby deposits. However, as mentioned earlier, local and national elites, as well as multinational companies such as the French oil company Total Energies, are benefiting most from these natural resources. Moreover, the same local and natural elites are involved in the illicit economy in Cabo Delgado, which involves, for example, drug trafficking, mostly heroin, and poaching, amongst others. Thus, segments of the population in Cabo Delgado are experiencing marginalization and exclusion from both the formal and the informal economy for at least some decades. To this socioeconomic inequalities, there is a religious and ethnic layer that I already hinted at above, So, for example, the local and national elites that benefit from Cabo Delgado, they are mainly composed of people who identify with the Makonde communities, which are predominantly Christian. And on the other hand, people who identify with the predominant Muslim Mwani or Makua communities are excluded and marginalized. And these Mwani and Makua communities are mainly drawn into this extremist insurgency groups. Although, as I say here on the slide, this is not an ethnic conflict. There are also Makonde people within this insurgency group, so it's a mixed group. But this is also playing a part in the conflict dynamics. So now to the basic conflict dynamics since 2017. The conflict officially started with a raid on Moçambique da Praia, which you can see here on the coast, on the northeast coast, on October 5th in 2017. You can see the Moçambique da Praia, which is a very important port town. It's has inhabitants of 130,000 people, and on this October the 5th, around 30 attackers armed with machetes, knives, firearms, Kalashnikovs, AK-47s, and machine guns raided the city. Initially in 2017 and 2018, these attacks focused on the surrounding districts of Moçambique da Praia, as well as Macomio and Palma, which is all in the far east of Cabo Delgado. And in these early stages of the insurgency, there were mostly small groups of around 10 people, mostly young men, who attacked small villages and towns in the Far East. This changed a bit in 2019 already, where we observed that the group already spread to neighboring districts within Cabo Delgado, such as Ancuabe, Ibo, and Meluco, which are further south a bit. In response, the Mozambican government deployed more police and military forces. However, in frequent clashes between these groups, between the Islamist Insurgency and the military forces, most of the time they defeated the military and the police forces and could claim supplies from them, such as weapons and equipment, and increase their capacity for further attacks. In addition, in that year, in 2019, the so-called Islamic State for the first time claimed one of these attacks for themselves, raising discussions about how their relation to the Islamic State is, and how their relation in the transnational Islamist and jihadist networks in Africa are, which is until today very vague, and we do not know exactly how they relate to each other. Towards the end of the year of 2019, as it was clear for the Mozambican government that they cannot stem actually the insurgency, they contracted the Russian private military company group Wagner, which is said to have direct ties to the Kremlin, but due to heavy losses, they left Mozambique already in November. In 2020, the Wagner group was replaced by the South African private military company, which is called HIIK Advisory Group. And they already had extensive experience with military interventions in Mozambique because its founder actively fought on the side of the Frelimo government during the Mozambican Civil War, and since then has maintained close ties with the government. This deployment took place at a time when the insurgency groups' attacks were increasing both in frequency and quality, and in 2020 actually we observed the most deadliest year in the insurgency. For example, they captured major towns like Moçambique da Praia. They not only attacked it, but they captured it. So all security forces were drawn out of Moçambique da Praia, and most of the civilians as well. And since then, it's functioned as the unofficial capital for the insurgency. And in 2020, they also engaged in their first cross-border attacks in southern Tanzania. In 2021, there were at the beginning of the year, in late March and early April, heavy and well-coordinated attacks on the cities of Palma and Macomia. And Palma is also in the northeast of Cabo Delgado, and it's also an important coastal town and the port to the Afungi Peninsula, where most of the French oil companies and their natural gas reserves are located. Yes, and it was attacked in early April, and after the battle, they gained full control of Palma as well. These major attacks again triggered for the first time triggered regional responses, so that the regional economic community in Southern Africa, the Southern African Development Community, for the first time deployed a peacekeeping force. The Southern African Development Community mission in Mozambique was ZAMIM abbreviated, with I think 1,000 troops. And additionally to that, Rwandan troops were deployed with another 1,000 personnel in the same year. And since then, this has a bit changed the conflict dynamics in Cabo Delgado. For instance, Palma and Mocimboa da Praia were recaptured by these intervention forces, and most of the insurgency hubs were destroyed, and so the ASWJ group dispersed again in Cabo Delgado, and now they are in 2020 so far they are using actually the same tactics as in 2018, smaller groups attacking small villages and towns. But yeah, it's far from over. And we will see how long SADC, like the ZAMIM forces and the Rwandan troops are still operating. And I guess this is it for now. I hope you have a better understanding now of the conflict. And thank you for your attention.
Perfect. Thank you, Enrico. Thank you for bringing this. Enrico is responsible for writing and compiling most of the information that you can find in HIIK's report, if I'm not incorrect. So we could, yes, say that he's our expert in the field. And it's very nice to see that, because HIIK is such an important entity here, bringing together a lot of those minds and students, and it's an incredible work, and we can have people like him coming here and saying those kind of things to us. I would like now to go directly to Cyrille as well to follow up with our program, because now we saw that the situation has been developing in Mozambique. And as I said in the beginning of this webinar, we are trying to create awareness for other conflicts around the world. And Cyrille is part of IPB. We're very happy to have her here, and as part of IPB family. She's the executive director for, and I hope to not say that incorrectly, but using here my French, les Nouveaux Droits de l'Homme in Cameroon. And so she's speaking from Cameroon, and I'm going to give the floor to her to speak a little bit with us from her perspective, how these kinds of conflicts, like the one we have in Mozambique, but it resembles a lot of conflicts in many central aspects, how we can approach these kinds of situations to help on bringing peace, because as we could see, a lot of the actions that were taken in the last years, as were presented by Enrico, was exactly about militarization. Mozambique received a lot of troops and military training, and is that the good way to approach the conflict and to come to resolution? Cyrille, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theo, for giving me the floor. Greeting to all the panelists and also other participants in this webinar. Yes, I'm Cyrille Rolande Béchamp, as you said. I'm a human rights activist in Cameroon. I'm executive director of Noveaux Droits de l'Homme, so you spell it very well. Your French is not so bad. I was set for this first episode of Hidden Conflict to give my perspective in concession on peace and concerning the conflict in Mozambique. What I want to say is that when we talk about hidden conflict, I linked it to internal conflict and crisis, because what I have is that when we talk about hidden conflict, the most of time there are internal conflict or internal crisis. So to have a recommendation about peace or about how can we deal with that kind of conflict, I think we must look about what are the root causes of that kind of conflict. So in my presentation, I start by show like the most important root causes we have in hidden conflict. And I also just put 1 or 2 points on the conflict dynamic, how this conflict goes out, and I finish with some kind of perspective or recommendation about those conflicts. So internal conflicts and crises generally have similar root causes. What we notice, first of all, about those conflicts is natural resources. It is generally observed that the areas in conflicts and crises in African countries are areas rich in natural resources. There are different types of natural resources you can see depending on the country. So it can be oil, it can be precious metals, it can be iron or gas, as in the case of Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. The question we can ask is, why does the presence of natural resources, which is normally a good thing because of it will generate, became a problem? Natural resources become a problem because of the bad governance. This bad governance is reflected in the absence of transparency in the management of these resources, the absence of accountability, the non-involvement of the population in the decision-making process. Natural resources are also a problem because the population does not benefit directly or indirectly from these resources. There is a huge revenue inequality. The local workforce is underexploited or abused. Another problem concerning natural resources is the impact of the exploitation of these resources on the health and the life of the population on one hand, and on the environment, their lands, the water to drink, the roads, etc. on the other hand. After natural resources as a root causes of hidden conflict or internal conflict and crisis, we have extreme poverty. Regions in Africa where there are armed insurrections are particularly poor. The population there lack everything. There are no schools, no health centers. Where they exist, access is very difficult and out of reach. The populations in this area live in extremely difficult conditions. Another causes is the social inequalities. Yeah. In most of this area, inequalities are very, very big and large. While a few have enough, the majority lack everything or the essential to survive. Another aspect of that conflict, political exclusion and youth marginalization. As we know, the inclusion of marginalized groups in the political process of governance, both democratic or customary, is essential to avoid withdrawal and the creation of a sense of not belonging. However, in countries where there are internal conflict and crisis, young people who are often educated despite the difficulties and who represent the majority of the population are often kept in the dark. They are not only kept apart, they are also very often violated in corruption, on human rights violation and abuses. Another point we have on that on those conflicts are religious and identity tensions. In front of this problem, populations tend to identify themselves with their religion or their ethnic origin. Religious and identity issue can be explained in different ways. It can be done because the population finds a sense of security there, or it can be due to the manipulation of actors involved in the conflict. That is, like when I look about internal conflicts or hidden conflict I know, you can see we will have those points coming out as anyway root causes of the conflict. Now, in how these conflicts are changing on the field, how are they evolving? Regularly, we will have the denials of leaders. When young people organize themselves to express their frustration with weapons, we very often observe the denial of the leaders. Most of the time, they try to minimize the problem. We also have inappropriate or limited responses from states. Responses are mostly inadequate and limited. Government usually use big military deployment as response to hidden or internal conflict. And today we are all agree on the fact that the only strong and violent military response is not appropriate for insurrection, internal insurrection or internal conflict. So this situation has many consequences, but we can just have it in some light point. We have gross human rights violations. We have mass internal displacement of population. We have the big needs of humanitarian aid. And we also notice the development of the organized crime or the reinforcement of the organized crime on those countries, in those countries. Now, if we have these pictures or this understanding of the situation, what can be our perspectives? As IPB, one of our slogans for Jordan campaigns is fund peace, defund arm, give peace a budget. So when we look at the 6 principles of common security, we directly see paths for peace and security. Some recommendation of the Common Security Report 2022 can guide us in the Cabo Delgado conflict. We can push on different points, such as to revitalize and implement the call by the UN Secretary General for a worldwide ceasefire as the starting point for peace processes in different regions in the world. To reinforce respect to international humanitarian law as a matter of urgency, given the increasing harm to civilians in recent conflicts. We must join our efforts in our different countries to work for global peace and security, because when your counterpart is not sure, you will not be sure either. There must be respect for UN Charter prohibition against the use of force and the inviolability of borders. We need to strengthen trust between states and peoples so that countries with different systems, cultures, religions, and ideology can work together on global challenges. We must build a country based on human needs. There's no development without peace, no peace without development, and neither is possible without respect for human rights. We must ensure inclusive governance at all levels in our societies to safeguard democratic principles and the inclusion of women and young people and minorities in governance. That is my perspective and conclusion and recommendation about hidden and what I call internal conflict and crisis. Thank you very much.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Cyrille, for your contribution. We do rely a lot on you because you have a lot of knowledge about this field, and I'm very happy to have you here. So thank you for your words. And as I haven't, sadly, I haven't had any response nor appearance here from Joseph. I would like to ask if one of the names here are just to check are here to, representing CISLAMO. So if you're here and you can raise your hand, maybe Joseph is not here, but he's appearing with a different name. But here, look, we have somebody raising the hand. So let me open here, promote to panelist. Asma Akbar. Yes. So let's see if we can open the connection here with Asma.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you. You've probably been here for quite a while listening to us. Okay.
Yes.
I'm very
Yes,
happy
right
to have you here. I'm sorry for this small confusion. Would you like then to present yourself and talk to us a little bit about CISLAMO?
Yeah, sure. My name is Asma Akbar, and I'm a PhD researcher working on my PhD project in Brussels School of Governance. And I came to know about the SAIDs through an email sent by our administrator. And I was like curious about this series of seminars because it was quite interesting to know about the conflicts that are not under the limelight at international level. So I have a couple of questions to our panelists, if you allow me, because there was some confusion in my mind.
Yes.
So,
well, but let me ask you: Are you speaking the name of CISLAMO? Are you the one appointed?
No. I'm just a participant.
Oh,
so I just raised my hand to be the part of the discussion. Sorry for the confusion.
Perfect. So let me just jump a little bit before you. Just as we don't have him here, let me just explain you all the situation, because our intention here was to bring also a name from somebody from the country, and CISLAMO, it's the name for the Conselho Islamico de Moçambique, or as we can translate, the Islamic Council of Mozambique. They would be the voices speaking to us to give their local perspective and how they see the conflict happening and how is the day-to-day life there. So it would be a very much an appreciated participation here, especially because they would be one of the main panelists here to give us the answers regarding how are things there. So I was looking very much for their participation as well. So thank you for raising your hand. I would encourage other people to do that as well. I hope we can address your questions. Obviously, we can try here to approach the questions the best way we can. So if anybody wants to raise the hand, just like she did, just like as Asma did, please do it. And I will give, as we can start a little bit of a small discussion here, I will give the floor to Asma. So please, if you want to just make your questions, we will try to address it. Asma?
Yes, sorry. Can I ask my question?
Yes, please, go forward.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so my basic question was, so we are discussing about the hidden conflict, but still I felt that I have not heard enough on that why these conflicts get hidden, because of course I am not talking only about in general perspective, but also I am sure there must be some context related to a particular, the conflict that gives it in shadow, that why it is not being highlighted like the other international conflicts are. And I would like to hear some views on the conflict in Mozambique, one. And the second, I was reading a paper today published by Congressional Research Review, and it was mentioned there that the basic problem, and also Enrico told during his presentation, that it is basically a ideological problem. And we have been talking a lot about, the inequalities and the socioeconomic factors and all that. But as I also read in the paper and also informed by and talked by Enrico, that there are some also political elites that are involved in that ideological conflict that is going on between, the two versions of Islam. One is Salafi and the second is a little bit moderate, that is Sufi. So I'm not saying that these socioeconomic factors and natural resources and, the occupation of these natural resources do not count, but I just want to know a bit more insight. I want to have a more insight on that, how this ideological conflict relates to these, indicators, socioeconomic and all that. And I would also like to second Cyrille, that how this problem relates to governance, because I'm also working on internal conflict, but in Pakistan, and trying to look into the different conflicts going on in Pakistan, but that is also pretty much the problem of governance and related to internal dynamics. But of course, there is some international perspective too. So just these two main questions, that why this is a hidden conflict, and the second, that how does it relate to the, the ideological aspect with the socioeconomic, factors. Thank you very much.
Perfect. I will take the lead here, but then I'll pass the word to Cyrille. And now, so I open the floor to Ilsa and Enrico if you want to give your perspectives on that. Look, first, your first question, it's core. It's a core to our idea, to our seminars. Our own director here, he asked us, somebody will ask you why those are the hidden conflicts chose and why are they hidden. In the beginning, the project even had the name as Forgotten Wars, but we literally saw as wars would be a very complicated term to use around this conflict. And also the idea of forgotten brings as well some kind of questioning. So I do thank you for asking that. And why are they hidden? Well, as you can see in our posts as well, and in all the material we addressed, we usually point out three main factors for how is this hidden. First, on the international discussions, for the political international discussions, economic international discussions, and you can see that inside space of international discussions, just like the UN, for example, and how there's a focus on some conflicts, and some other conflicts feel like they are forgotten or they are being hidden from the eyes of many. And there we can point out two of the other factors here, is that the media and doesn't publicize and advertise so much those conflicts, and social media as well. We have such a powerful, a strong tool to use, but within our social cycles in social media, we are not talking about this. So why they are hidden? I would say to you that as I am being one of the leading figures here throughout this series, at the end, we are going to come up with an article addressing everything. And the idea is to tackle exactly why are those hidden conflicts. I wouldn't give you a clear answer, especially because each conflict, obviously, they are hidden for one cause, right? Each one of them, they have their idiocracies. So idiosyncrasies, that's how you say. So we are going to tackle them here. And before I give the floor to Cyrille, I would just like to get a piece of information that Enrico presented to us, Cyrille presented to us, and I will use this as an answer for Asma's question. That first, in his presentation, he presented we cannot summarize the conflict as only an ethnic conflict. And CISLAMO, Joseph, if you look up on the internet, and there's one article that I can share with you of people in CISLAMO. They gave this interview, as they say as well that we cannot only summarize this conflict as being a religious one as well. So this would be very, very problematic, because the religion has been there, and we do have to approach this a religious perspective using history as well. So the history of Mozambique within the Islam is very, very, very far back. We can think not only just the presence of the Portuguese in the country, but it goes way before that. So we cannot summarize it as only being religious. But Cyrille pointed out the natural resources, and this brings us to the point of energy in the country. But if you see as well some of the internet footage of the insurgents they were saying that they are not doing this because of energy. They are not doing this because there's a French energy company they made an investment of what I got here, $20 billion in Cabo Delgado to extract oil, but they are saying we are not doing this because of that. So what is the reason of the conflict? We don't have a clear answer for that. And why is it hidden from our eyes? Well, maybe Cyrille, would you like to give a word on that?
Yes. Thank you, Theo, and thank you, Asma, for your question. Why do we have hidden conflict? For me, I call them hidden conflict or neglected conflict because there are two aspects. You know that in the matter of country, we have what we call sovereignty. You will see states which state that they don't want another state to look about what is happening in their indoors, because their internal problem, they can resolve it without anybody. And this is reinforced with capitalistic interests. You know that when even to have a country in the agenda of the, let's say, Security Council meeting, you know that it's a huge diplomatic and political discussion and challenge, because we have all those interests now and those country states who are not willing to have this, to accept that we have a meeting on their local or internal problem. So when we have this, and also we have United Nations, we can't do it without the approval of main actors of the Security Council. You will have, like, we talk about something inside, but nobody can speak loudly about it. That is the case even in Cameroon, where I am. I don't know if you know about the Anglophone crisis. We are fighting since 5 years today to have this problem be speak loudly in United Nations or in Africa Union, but we don't have it because there are many actors who are blocking. They don't want this discussion to go forward and to to call this attention on the crisis. So you should look about states of sovereignty, capitalistic interests, and all this relation with French people, Americans, all these interests in what in state relation. Now, another thing we should keep in mind is that when a conflict stays in the long time, dynamic changes, and sometimes if you don't pay attention, you will lose. You will stay on some line. I think that the conflict started there, because when the conflict stay long, sometimes begin like we want better condition of life. You will see religious coming in, you see politics coming in, and like 2, 4, 5 years, sometimes it's like, where did this conflict start? We start thinking about it. That is why we work on conflict transformation, because we need to go back and back and back and to see where did this conflict start. But that is also why me as actor, I always use state or actor to find rapidly, a solution to a conflict or to open a dialogue very quickly. Because when you stay quiet or you use force, other actors come in, criminals, all because you know that when there is a conflict, they also industry of crime going on under the crisis. So they use the crisis to hide, and they sell arms, they sell drugs, all what you can imagine. They develop illegal economies. And when you have these actors taking power in the field, it becomes very difficult to finish or to have a resolution or a solution to a conflict, because now you have different interests coming in, and it becomes difficult. Even when you have a meeting on a conflict, it's become very difficult to have somebody who is very like realistic all the line, because you have other interests coming in the process. The thing becomes very, very, very difficult. Now, concerning bad governance, for me, I think that if at the beginning, population there where there are natural resources, state actors knows that these natural resources is first belonging to the population who are there on that field, and try to have politics that integrate them in the decision making, and really a good politic of revenue sharing. I think that conflict will be, it's not possible to have let's say a life without conflict, but maybe I think we will have less, we have less conflict on those parts. But what is happening is very, very different. Can you imagine that in our countries, those regions are more poor than other regions? They say we take all the resources is for outside. So sometimes they are taking like oil, but there is not even lights in villages there. How do you want that people to be to live and to be happy? It's not possible. With the time, after 1 year, 2 years, when children grow and become big people, they start thinking, and they say, how is this going like this? How is it that we have to suffer like this, although we have resources and wealth in our village? But we have politics and laws that said wave and natural resources belong to the states. In our country, that we are, what that means, that is fuel to conflict, because it is not fair. It's not fair. And that is why I think, and even when you don't have it, you have politics in place, population don't even know what is happening to their land, what is happening. So that is really, that's bad governance, state of law. For me, human rights situation are really, at the center, and we need to see about as a long-term resolution of conflict. Yes, you can have a resolution now or a ceasefire agreement, but after all, we need to look about state of law, human rights in our countries to be sure that we have a long-term solution to problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyrille. Ilsa or Enrico, would you like to give any comments on why do you think those are hidden conflicts?
Maybe just a short one. When we were like conceptualizing the hidden conflicts, Thea and I, so we one of the ideas was also for us, what is not part, like conflicts that are violent and really, really important, that still somehow don't really make it to Western media. So for example, Europe and the US. And I think one of the ideas was also like the geographical position of that conflict. So the further away it is, and if also like the economic implications, for example, if that doesn't really affect these countries, you're not really going to see it on the political agenda. That might be different. For example, like we only concentrate on conflicts that are not here, like on the European media, but that could be different. So the Mozambique conflict could be really, really visible in African media. So it could be like in South Africa, you still have some sort of information on that. Or if you have a conflict in Nepal, you might see that maybe in China, but not necessarily here. So that was kind of one of the ideas. And that was one of the sort of what helped us conceptualize and kind of find the names of conflicts, or to find the conflicts that we thought are hidden from us maybe as well, or from like, okay, so we deal with these conflicts very often because we search for them specifically, but maybe like for the average European, they just might not be visible. So yeah, maybe that helps you a little bit as to how we came up with the list.
Perfect, yes. Enrico, would you like to say something?
I just can re-emphasize what Ilsa just said. The other day, I just wanted to make a diagram how the news coverage of the conflict here in Germany would be, but there's literally nothing in German media about Cabo Delgado. Most of these news are about celebrities that went to Cabo Delgado before 2017, because the islands in front of the coast are very well made for tourists.
Yes.
The only news. And now maybe the most prominent German news, Tagesschau, they bring once in a year a short story about Mozambique. But I think this is re-emphasizing what Ilsa just said. It's depending on where you sit and what media you consume. And I think for the average German and European, these are the hidden conflicts, of course. Yeah, but in South Africa or Ethiopia, I think this might be another situation already. And also what Cyrille just said, I think for at least 2 years, the Mozambican government downplayed all the insurgency attacks, preventing others from considering this as like a conflict or a war or something. So shielding their sovereignty from outside intervention, and using this as a pretext to do nothing and to see what happens. And also the other side of this is that there's a conflict, and who goes to the conflict area to report on that? So most of the reports, the evidence is secondhand. So I think this adds another layer to that as well, that the first-hand information is just inside Cabo Delgado and inside the conflict area, and sparsely comes out.
Thank you. Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with you. And I do agree with all the speakers. I do have one point to take, so we could go for one next question so we can continue the discussion. But as I want to make this very horizontal as well, as this is a discussion, I give the question back to Asma to see her perspective as well. Why would you say this is a hidden conflict? So if you could just take a little time to give us your perspective, why would you say those are hidden conflicts? Or in the case of Mozambique, if you can speak about it specifically.
Yeah, I would like just to give a reference of my research, because I was also working on the internal conflict in Pakistan, and I was looking at it with the perspective of theories of international security studies, and I was the theoretical framework I'm using in my research is human security. So the finding of my research, though my defense is not public yet, but I have already submitted my research. So the findings of my research showed that I would like to borrow the concept which Ilsa just spoke about it, that to the extent violence is attached to any problem, that is loud. And where the violence is missing, the focus of the government is less on that problem. Because in Pakistan, there are two kinds of problems that are very much related. For instance, terrorism and extremism. So normally, when you go into the security policy and you notice that the regions where there are problems of extremism, but that have not erupted into the kind of violent conflicts, or there is a lower death rate, those regions are usually missing from the lens or the focus of the government. So I think my perspective of being hidden is that we are somehow at international levels insensitized to the different kind of effects people are suffering. It could not be only the physical force or the death rate, but also the way people are living their life, because the concept of human security is that a person has a right to live a dignified life, not at the level of animal, but at the level of being a human. So I would just like to say that, and I would like to congratulate you that it is very important to sensitize, and to talk about those conflicts or those aspects which we do not focus, collectively.
Yeah, thank you. And as we're just going as this in a very organic way, I do invite you to keep here so as well we can have your perspective. But I would give the next question directly to Cyrille, and then of course I invite you all to give your answers. Because as Cyrille was saying, we do have to deal with these problems of bad governance and deal with the state of law and how human rights are being disrespected. And we are here tackling the specific case of Mozambique. And for those who don't know, so this is an informative session, so I'm just going to give this, but I do assume everybody might know what I'm going to say. But the situation in Cabo Delgado, and I'm pretty sure Enrico knows about it, the insurgent group, they are referred as, let me as well here try to say, Al-Shabaab. So I don't know if my pronunciation here is correct as well. But for what I've seen, this is a translation for youth. And the news that, the very small news that we get from Cabo Delgado and the very small quantity of information that we have from there, they do highlight that this group, they are consisted mainly of what can be identified as youth. They do have registers of children fighting, and this message is being used to get into this group. So the group recruits a lot of youth to participate in their activities. And what seems very present in the analysis that I've seen as well, is how this group represents some kind of discontentment with the situation. And here we also represent in youth. So, Cyrille, how would you say that these kinds of situation, as we have been discussing here, how they impact youth, and how this impact can be conducting to situations as we have in Mozambique? And if they were different, we would be impacted youth to work towards peace, for example.
Yes, the conflict, the situation, when I was talking about natural resources and the extreme poverty, is to show how this impacts on youth and how these youth are recruited by those terrorist groups. You know, I'm using the case of my country in Cameroon, because we know that there is a Boko Haram also here in the northern part of the country. But we report that those terrorist groups recruit youth for about like less than €2 a day. So when they recruit them, it's not, you see that there is a matter of hungry. It's a matter of have something to live with. It's a matter of poverty, because they propose revenues to that children, to that youth. They propose another thing, because there's nothing, they don't have choice. Like you are growing up and you want something for your life, but you don't have opportunity. In Cameroon, like I was saying, schools, there are no schools in those regions where there are tourist groups installed, you know, no opportunities, no politics or development. You know, when those terrorist groups comes in, there's like the small god for that youth, because they sell nothing, but they sell something that they dream for. So I come back to the needs of population, the human needs in our countries, because all those groups, they recruit those people. When you think they say, I want to eat, I want somewhere where I can sleep. When I go there, they treat me well, they give me this so I can give something to my family. I don't have a father, or my father were killed, and so on. You also have the violation of human rights. Let me explain. States must bear in mind that they are the one. When I'm talking about state, I'm talking about even state actors. State actors must act on the field knowing that they are responsible of people. When you come somewhere, you make a big violence, you arrest people, you violate human rights, you create hunger, you create people, youth are hungry about you, you know, are angry about you. And when you have this feeling, you have people who say, those people, they are thinking we will fight them. You know, you make people think that they are not part of your politics. It's like you are fighting against them. And that is why internal conflicts are very difficult, because now you will see population working with terrorist groups, because they think that terrorist groups are more able to protect them than the military or the policeman who came there just one time a week, you know, make this order and go. But they stay there, they sleep there, so they need to feel that they are secure. And who can bring them security at that time, at that point, is those groups. So that is where I'm saying that, and youth are really, you know, they are like hostage of that system. That is why I think that violent military operation, when we talk about internal conflicts, are not good. They are creating more problems than they are resolving. We need to have responsible states. We have like national strategy and policy to work about terrorism, about demobilization, to work about what can they offer to that youth. They're not offering anything. You know, there's nothing, they're doing nothing. They take all the money of these natural resources and they're buying big cars and big projects in towns. But in village, there are no things. There are no option there. I forget another. What was the other question?
No, it was exactly tackling the situation as we have the Al-Shabaab, as they are referred to youth, but you said exactly about the bad governance, the bad state of law, the disrespect of human rights, and how these situations, how they connect exactly with youth. So I think you gave a very proper answer to my question. Ilsa or Enrico, would you like to give a word on that as well? Do you have any kind of thoughts? Okay. And Asma, do you have any contribution regarding that?
Yeah, but from a little bit different, standpoint, maybe. Youth, I guess, is very much important. It is very important also, not in terms of that how the conflict is affecting this group, but also that how this could be an asset, to recover from the conflict, because this is the most vibrant, age group. So if you start with that group, because then you can also imagine that the impact that goes mainly on this, age group, and when it comes to that how this conflict could be, somehow managed or to start with. So equally, this age group could be, a starter to manage the conflict. Yeah, just this thought came to my mind, and I.
Those are two complementary answers. Yes, I do agree with you. But yes, so again, first of all, thank you, Asma, for raising the hand and bringing some questions to our discussion as well. Thank you, Cyrille, for coming and participating with us. She was so kind to me when I asked her about this participation. So thank you, that was amazing. I do agree with everything you said. And I would like to say thank you as well to HIIK, here being represented by Enrico, our specialist from HIIK who brought us the facts in the beginning, and Lilsa as well for appearing and giving her thoughts on our situation. I will sadly close this discussion for now. As I said, I wanted to have Joseph from CISLAMO here to bring his perspectives from there. When I spoke with him, he even said, yeah, we're having lots of conflicts here. It would be amazing to present that to you. So he seemed very interested in that. So I suspect something happened there. And I do invite everybody to check our content in the social media as we are doing. We're going to have another session in the beginning of October. And we're going to move to another conflict, obviously. And I hope to have you all there if you're interested in learning a little bit more on other conflicts. Ilsa, would you like to say some closing words from HIIK?
Yeah, thank you, all of you, for being here and for your amazing and really, really informative and interesting input. And also really thank you to Theo for coming up with the idea for a collaboration. So yeah, thank you, everyone. And looking forward to seeing you for our next talk, hopefully, in, like Tia said, in October. I think that's on Myanmar, if I'm correct. Yeah. And also, check our social media sites and you'll find like every week new conflicts. So yeah, thank you for being here.
Perfect. Enrico, would you like to give your goodbyes?
No. Thank you, everyone. It was really informative.
Okay. Cyrille, Asma, would you like as well just to say some closing words?
Yes, just to say thank you. Thank you. Very happy to meet you all and see you.
Perfect. Asma?
Yeah, thank you very much for the session, and I'm looking forward for the next session.
Perfect, perfect. You're all invited. Thank you for coming and for your participation.